Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for the season finale of our webinar series showcasing Gigamon's visibility and security delivery platform and how it complements other tools such as Fortinet as a valuable component to a well-architected, durable, resilient security solution. So again, today is the final episode of season 1. So to all those who have been with us through every episode, thank you so much for your time. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time today, again, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the content of today's episode. Before we get started, a couple slides about exclusive networks. We are Fortinet's #1 global distributor with over 62 offices worldwide and a global deals desk to handle international deals and logistics all over the world. If you have a global or international opportunity, we can help you with that. We have a pre-configuration and staging services. We specialize in cyber and cloud security focused distribution with rapid turnaround on quote, sales, and technical support. We embrace a culture of boutique style distribution where you have real phone numbers and email addresses and direct access to account management resources and technical support resources such as myself. We offer assistance with go-to-market strategies, building of qualified leads, and closing of deals. So when you're trying to compete to replace or augment an existing solution and you need a win, remember that you have us, distribution partner that you can leverage to get you across the finish line before the other guy. So essentially, you can think of us as an extension of yourselves. We truly believe that we offer value-added marketing and technical support with global reach. We also offer certification training in either group or individual setting, a range of financing and leasing services to cover a variety of projects and technology requirements, and a growing list of vendor partners chosen specifically to integrate with each other. So please remember, we offer a Fortinet NSE certification training support, as well as Gigamon Tech and Pro certification training support, security tool migration, pre and post sale support, staging services, and security tool jumpstart services. So on to the agenda for today. As always, I will have a brief recap of the previous episode as well as the overall message for this season. If you missed the first 3 episodes because you were living under a rock, then the recordings are now available on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, search for Exclusive Networks NA. NA stands for North America, because we do have different channels for all of our other different parts of the globe. We're monitoring the channel, so if you like to leave your questions in the comments section, feel free to do that, and we'll answer them there. Or if you'd like to contact us directly through email, our contact information will be available at the end of this presentation. Next, we'll get into the main topic of discussion after the recap for this episode, and that is Fabric Manager, which is the single pane of glass from which you manage and orchestrate all things Gigamon. Finally, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about Season 2, the pillars that will make up the composition of our next season. Also, we're putting together a survey, just a small survey, that will probably be distributed after the season's over to get viewer opinions in the series so far, and more importantly, to ask you about what topics you like to see or features that you like us to demonstrate, and we will try to accommodate that. So essentially, this gives you an opportunity to kind of shape upcoming seasons and be the light that guides my humble craft to dry land. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Previously on the Giganet webinar. So the overall message this season has been about the value of Gigamon as a part of a well-architected solution for large networks to be able to protect themselves against the ever-increasing threats that are the result of this digital transformation age that we're in. In my experience, and that has been true of everywhere I've been except for this job, and I guess it's even true about this company, because this company is about distribution of IT solutions, but distribution nonetheless. But most businesses are not about IT by nature. They are rather using information technology as something that is needed as a result of e-commerce. So the decision makers are looking for tools to solve multiple problems, number one, and they're looking for solutions that simplify operations, not complicate them. So basically, tools have to be good and they also have to be consumable. Thus, Gigamon needs to go beyond just security because the main purpose of a network infrastructure is not to be protected, but rather to offer connectivity between the business to business as well as business to client, so that those businesses can offer to their clients whatever product or services they're offering, and which is their how they make money. And that connectivity needs to be fast to keep up with today's speed of society, and it needs to be resilient because, well, we want what we want and we want it all the time. I think that Gigamon achieves this brilliantly with its visibility fabric, not only offering visibility for security purposes, but also improving network resiliency. This slide here is one of my favorites, along with the other slide towards the end of the presentation, and I think that's why I have it in every episode. And this illustration is something that I believe you guys can leverage when selling Gigamon. If you're able to speak intelligently about these three topics in the circles with the orange text and back whatever you're saying up with features and benefits of the Gigamon solution and how it complements the overall security stack, I think it's going to help you. It's going to go a long way in helping you to convince your customers to buy into Gigamon. And it starts with access and control over data. I think that by now, and I've said this many times over the previous episodes, we can all agree that when you have a certain degree of network complexity, visibility is always going to be an issue, and that's only going to get worse as network speeds get faster. So being able to tap the network, aggregate that traffic, and feed it somewhere where you can access it, visualize it, understand it, and steer it accordingly to your tools is something that I don't know why anyone wouldn't want that. And then all the other benefits that are associated with that. For example, something as simple as being able to take the tools from being inline, that facilitates not only future upgrades, so now network upgrades don't become network/security upgrades, because what happens with security tools is that over time they become a bottleneck for the network, because the network always wants to go faster, and the tools that were purchased and are capable of monitoring or analyzing at X speed, now you're asking them to analyze at XXXX speed, and that's just not possible. So again, your upgrades become more difficult because you have to budget dollars for not only the network, but also the security tools that are in those sectors of the network. You have to involve more people, things take more time. So we want to boost security efficiency by optimizing the use of existing tools and also reduce complexity, not only of the infrastructure as well as the monitoring tools themselves, but also any complexity associated with future upgrades. And when you talk about boosting security efficiency, you can also talk about return on investment. If you can take the tools from being in line, then you can reassign tools to different roles. So a tool that now is not fast enough to do inline monitoring can be retasked to another out-of-band role, but you can still use it. So those dollars that were spent on that tool are not completely lost. And then the end game is an increased confidence in security posture. And of course, that I believe is, again, in the mind of those who are making the decisions, that's what they ultimately all want to achieve. So where are we now in the series? Okay, so this is kind of a hierarchical overview. We started at the bottom with the overview as well as tab versus span episode. Episode 2, we talked about the TA series, traffic aggregation and distribution. And in the last episode, which was probably our most technical episode, we talked about the HC series nodes as well as the GigaSmart features, which are the licenses that you buy with the H series nodes in order to apply traffic intelligence. So today, in our last episode, we're going to talk about Fabric Manager, which is your proverbial central pane of glass. So all roads lead to Fabric Manager. FM delivers the single pane of glass view of all physical and virtual Gigamon nodes across the visibility fabric. With FM, you get an easy-to-use GUI to orchestrate Gigamon's patented flow mapping traffic policies, visualize network topology connectivity, and identify visibility hotspots. A single instance of FM can manage hundreds of Gigamon physical and virtual visibility nodes across multiple locations, data centers, and public and private cloud. FM lets you scale to the size and complexity of your network as it grows over time. These are some of the key features and benefits. I've highlighted some of the ones that I believe to be the most important. Obviously, right at the center, we have centralized management and control, which needs no explanation. If you have a tool deployed that has a distributed architecture, you need to be able to log into one place and see everything. You don't want to be able to log into the individual boxes and only see part of the picture. Also, we have GigaVUE-FM ToolView. ToolView facilitates tool capacity planning by ensuring the tool is optimally utilized, empowering users to select the best tool to route network traffic based on response availability. Since you can see the traffic that is going in and out of every Gigamon port, and thus every tool that is hooked up to the Gigamon ports or to the Gigamon boxes, you can see how much of what is being sent where. So what that means is that you have information about what traffic is being sent to which tools, percentage-wise, so you can not only control, but change that dynamically as the characteristics of your infrastructure change. Also, we have Fabric Maps. Fabric Maps enables flow mapping across clusters to scale network visibility across hundreds of nodes. And essentially, flow mapping is granular filtering and forwarding. So flow mapping takes line rate traffic anywhere from 1 gigabit to 100 gigabits from the network and sends it through a set of user-defined map rules to the tools and applications that secure, that monitor, and that analyze the IT infrastructure. Flow mapping provides granularity and scalability above and beyond the capabilities of connection and ACL filter-based technologies by addressing the problems inherent from going beyond small numbers of connections, or when more than one traffic distribution rule is required, which means that you're sending traffic to multiple tools at the same time, or load balancing traffic through multiple instances of the same tool. We also have role-based access control, which essentially helps you prevent unauthorized changes. Automation SDK enables Fabric automation and bulk configurations, reducing the overall time for Fabric deployment. Grouping of visibility nodes provides grouping and visibility nodes by category, sites, data centers, and locations. Excuse me. License Manager facilitates viewing and assigning of GigaSmart application licenses to Gigamon Visibility Fabric and floating licenses between duplicate HC series nodes. So right now, and I discussed this in the last episode, the way that the floating licenses are working is that you can float licenses between like nodes, so from HC1 to HC1, and that's why they talk about duplicate HC series nodes. In the future, the capability to float licenses will be essentially infrastructure agnostic. So you can float a license between an HC1, an HC2, and an HC3, regardless of the model, as long as it is a license that can be handled by the hardware. Programmable APIs for software-defined visibility empowers traffic monitoring or IT operation management tools to use RESTful APIs to discover the nodes for inventory and status collection. Use APIs also to orchestrate behavior changes in the visibility fabric. And I have a few slides where we're going to look at that. Fabricview Traffic Analyzer. Provide IT administrators a dashboard of network visualization to identify top conversations, applications, endpoints, and protocols. Scheduling capabilities. Automate functionality scheduling. So scheduling of firmware version updates to one of many nodes in the visibility fabric. Also scheduling of visibility node configuration backups that allow you to restore a good baseline if any inadvertent changes are applied. This is an illustration of one of the features that I was talking about, which is the flow mapping or the fabric map. I'm sorry. So the ability to create maps that include not only the components of the Gigamon visibility fabric, but also all the tools as well as network infrastructure, help you get a better picture of their overall architecture. So when you're looking at your dashboards and you're trying to understand why some things are happening, it's nice to also be able to see, oh, this tap is tapping, whatever switch, or this aggregated traffic is coming by way of this TA series, or this port is connected to this tool. So of course you got to make sure that these maps are actually physically connected as well. And these are the maps that you're going to use also to programmatically make changes to the way that the visibility fabric functions when you're making API calls. So when you're integrating with other tools such as Fortinet, and you have an event that is triggered on a firewall, and you have an action for that event that is a webhook to an API call, you can, for example, programmatically change some of the maps, which means that the flow of traffic or the path of traffic can change. And we'll see that in a few slides. Use cases. Obviously, the biggest use case for Gigamon is that of an organization with a certain degree of network complexity and a distributed footprint that wants to protect centrally against threat to its infrastructure regardless of the characteristics of that infrastructure. Security teams that are tasked with the detection and remediation of emerging threats. When it comes to catching the bad guys in the act, speed matters. And there's no better way to catch potential threats than from network sensors, because you're catching it as it's happening, live in real time. Monitoring of network performance, because not everything that happens is the result of an attack. The ability to map out the highs and lows of network traffic, top talkers, over and underutilized resources in the network, and then change accordingly, it's very important to network operations teams. Not only that, but if you're able to understand the flow of traffic through your infrastructure, then that's also going to help you when you are talking about how to architect future upgrade projects and how to funnel dollar budgets to the areas of your network that need the most attention. And obviously, floating licensing management, which Fabric Manager is required for that. So here we have an illustration of the Fabric Manager integration with on-prem and private cloud infrastructure, specifically VMware. Fabric Manager integrates with vCenter, which is required, as well as NSX Manager for added functionality and added visibility into the software-defined data centers. FM integration with public cloud infrastructure, specifically AWS. I'm not really going to get too much into this today because I will be dedicating at least one episode next season to this topic. But it is worth mentioning that AWS recently made mirror traffic available to customers. So that changed the way you implemented Gigamon in AWS a little bit, from the visualization down here in the bottom where you had Gigamon virtual taps, to where now you just have mirror traffic that you tunnel to the vSeries nodes. But that hasn't changed the usefulness of Gigamon in public cloud. It essentially means that you can just save some money on the GV taps, but you still need to filter that traffic and steer it to tools. Also, it's worth mentioning that there are nuances, which I will cover, when it comes to deployments in a scenario where the infrastructure falls under a hybrid model versus fully or mostly cloud model. And of course, there's always multi-cloud. So I'll be going over that. You can kind of see that here. Like if you have an organization that is mostly in AWS, it's going to make a lot of sense to deploy the tools and Fabric Manager in AWS. Whereas when you have hybrid infrastructure where you have, on-prem and then you have public cloud, there are costs associated with traffic entering and leaving the cloud. So that has to be taken into account. So let's take a look at the configuration and management. So as far as the initial configuration, it is not unlike any of the other components. So through CLI, you can log in and launch the Jumpstart script, and that allows you to configure basically all the basic stuff. And then after that, you just log in through the preferred method, which is the web GUI. You have integration with other applications using RESTful API and alerts that can be received by any syslog server or SNMP manager. And please, of course, remember the credentials, which are admin and admin123 capital A exclamation sign. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the API. So if you guys are familiar with Fortinet, you probably recognize the picture on the left. This is the automation screen from a FortiGate running 6.2.2. And essentially there's a bunch of pre-configured triggers and then some actions you can take. One of the actions is a webhook. So that's basically an API call. So you just fill out the HTTP or HTTPS address of the API. So you will put in there your Gigamon API address and authentication, and then the command in the body that you want to execute. So think about the scenario on the right where you have a network tap between two resources, and that information is being fed to the visibility fabric, and then from there is being fed to the tool. So let's just say you're not decrypting the traffic because it's not necessary, but the tool, your FortiGate, senses an abnormality, and that abnormality, wow, that's a big word, triggers a action which calls the API and changes the map. So now you begin to decrypt the traffic and send it to the tool decrypted for better analysis. So this is another illustration of essentially how that works, where you have your traffic here that you're monitoring. You're monitoring physically the connections going to your production network, and logically through GigaVUE-FM, any traffic that is flowing inside of the hypervisors, VM to VM traffic, and you're sending all of that to the visibility fabric. And the visibility fabric applies traffic intelligence and sends that traffic to the tools as needed, and you are monitoring all of that through GigaVUE Fabric Manager. And then if the tools sense anything where you have an action programmed, then it can make a call to the API and it can change the way that traffic maps work, to the point where you can simply, you can block traffic as a result of an action that comes from a trigger in your security tools. So here we have the compute requirements for Virtual Fabric Manager Edition. There is a hardware version of FM, and that's the picture that you saw in the introduction slide. That's a turnkey solution, so you don't really need to worry about those compute resources. But more than likely, I think that most customers are going to kind of go for the OVA because it's just simpler. If you have already a virtualization environment, you just put Fabric Manager can be anywhere. Okay, so floating license model with FM. So essentially we have application filtering and metadata. We cover those GigaSmart features in the last episode. And again, please remember that in the old days, you used to have a lot of the licenses were locked to the hardware. And if you purchased X amount of licenses for hardware box 1, and then you ended up not needing some of those over time because the dynamic of the flow of traffic in your network has shifted, then those dollars are now, lost. So with floating licenses, obviously, you get to make use of that, better. So again, better return on investment for dollars spent in the deployment of Gigamon. So app filtering and metadata is floating, time-bound or perpetual both, and subscription also available. Other GigaSmart features also floating, also time-bound or perpetual. And for now, there is no subscription model. That's probably going to change at some point, and I'll update everybody when it does at some point next year. Advanced features for the GigaVUE-TA, those are node locked at this time and perpetual. Cloud SKUs are node locked with GigaVUE-FM. So GigaVUE-FM does not support floating licenses when running on GigaVUE Cloud Suite for Azure or AWS at this time. If that changes, again, I'll make sure to update everybody. And then we have trial licenses that are floating, and existing licenses for software version under 5.7. So you have, I guess you have both node lock and floating. And I guess for floating means floating license with GigaVUE-FM, GigaVUE OS 5.7 that can be assigned to supported nodes as needed. So this slide was a little confusing. It's from their release notes for OS 5.7. Also, they have the term time-bound versus subscription, and I think time-bound means that it's related to the time that you also have support for the box, whereas subscription is just on an ongoing basis. So I'm gonna get some more clarification for that. So when we have our upcoming episodes and seasons, I'll be able to explain that a little bit better. So here is the FM licensing options. First and foremost, I want to highlight this first one. So there is an FM free edition that manages one physical visibility fabric node. So this is an opportunity for you to, if you have a deployment on a remote site and you're trying to get the Gigamon buy-in that way, and you're going in with a solution with an HC1 to do inline bypass and do SSL TLS decryption, you can sweeten the deal and talk about how, hey, we're gonna give you Fabric Manager, which is your, it will give you the ability to remotely manage that HC1. And not only that, but you have an opportunity for an upsell there because, once you have Fabric Manager in place and that HC1, which is very close to the edge of that remote side, which means that majority of the traffic is flowing through, you can talk to your customer about traffic analysis. Do you have a traffic analyzer? Oh, you don't? Well, let's talk about Fabricview Traffic Analyzer, which is an add-on to Fabric Manager. We're going to talk about it a little bit in the upcoming slides. And that is just another opportunity for added business there. We also have the hardware appliance SKU here. and it manages up to 10 physical visibility fabric nodes. All right, so Fabricview Traffic Analyzer, which gives you the ability to visualize network traffic traversing the visibility fabric. So think about it. We talked about, excuse me, in all the episodes, how to go from pockets of coverage to coverage in your covering the entire landscape. So you have tabs, you have aggregation, you have HC series nodes. So not only do you have the ability to map and steer the traffic, but also if you purchase the Fabricview Traffic Analyzer, then you can also have a traffic analyzer through Gigamon. So what are the challenges when it comes to not only traffic but application management and analysis? So essentially, the challenges and the Gigamon solution, and that is to go from a bunch of dashboards with limited reach and sample visibility to a centralized solution. You have Gigamon everywhere through all your tabs and your aggregation and your AC series nodes. So use it to analyze traffic metrics. And that is yet another problem that you can solve with Gigamon. And that's something that I also talked about. I believe I've talked about in every episode. In addition to tools having to be not only good but also consumable, we live in personally, I believe that we live in an era where IT tools are a lot of the time specialized. So it's nice to have tools that solve multiple problems. And from a value proposition, and I think I said this in the last episode, if your customer is looking to solve one problem, and that's honestly the only problem that they have, they're probably going to find the cost associated with Gigamon difficult. So the value proposition, it's exponentially better when there are multiple issues that need to be solved, and Gigamon can solve them. Okay, so let's take a look at the Fabricview Traffic Analyzer solution brief. So fabric-centric visualization of network traffic traversing the visibility fabric. And this allows your administrators to use Fabric Manager as a first level dashboard to track the following metrics. So you have conversations between addresses or hosts, applications, endpoints, protocols, URLs, HTTP response code, so you can detect possible server compromise with redirects or distributed denial of service attacks if servers are unavailable, and production neighbors, so network endpoints using certain protocol discoveries so that you can kind of see, that who is the neighbor of XYZ appliance. So key benefits and use cases. On the benefit side, we have augment the organization's security and monitoring infrastructure with a top-level view of traffic patterns. If you're able to identify the areas of your network that need attention, and this is what I'm talking about when I talk about traffic patterns, then again, you can steer future dollars to make sure that you upgrade or that the upgrades are centered around the needs of the business instead of just arbitrarily picking a sector of your network because you have X amount of dollars that you need to spend in your budget. And then, 8 months, 9 months down the line, you're being questioned about why you spent $500,000 or something where there was another area of the network that was desperately in need of an upgrade. Use cases: provide IOC to administrators who may want to conduct deeper analysis in the security monitoring appliances, give visualization of network traffic patterns measured using high fidelity NetFlow. Again, I talked about NetFlow in episode 2 and the difference between sampled NetFlow generated at the appliance and NetFlow with metadata enrichment generated centrally through Gigamon. So here we have the computing requirements for Fabricview Traffic Analyzer. You have in hardware appliance, there's just okay, so I guess the CPUs is just one option, but then you do have different RAM and FPS options. And then these are the virtual appliance options. Very important for you guys to know that in order to create data for Fabricview Traffic Analyzer, you need NetFlow, and therefore you need the NetFlow GigaSmart license. And that was one of the traffic intelligence licenses that I discussed in the previous episode. Okay, so that is the content for today. And again, we are here at another one of my favorite slides. So I put this slide in pretty much every episode. You should be familiar with this slide by now. I feel like I can just put it up and I don't really have to say anything. Our goal is basically to get the end users, your customers, to see the benefits of going from the scenario on the left to the one on the right. Just think about the question marks with regards to visibility in those areas closer to the edge of the network, and the distributed administration and lack of communication on the left versus on the right, where you have centralized management and teams working together towards a common goal. So just so you guys know, I can make these slides available to anybody who is interested, and you can take all of them or parts of them. We can talk about what to say and topics of conversation for each slide as well. So let me know if you guys want to take advantage of that. Okay, so season 2, I do want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the pillars. Season 2 is going to be a little bit more technical. We're going to have specific use cases. If you want more of business guided discussions, please make sure to let me know when you answer the survey. Okay, we're going to talk about building materials. We're going to talk about architecting for visibility, and then how to transition from that to an architecture for security perspective, as well as just architecting for security. And that basically talks about just adding, SSL, TLS decryption capabilities. We're going to talk about public cloud. And we're also going to talk about Insight, which is Gigamon's network detection and response platform. Always, we will be featuring Fortinet as the tool of choice. You guys know that we love Fortinet here at Exclusive Networks. So that's going to be the bulk of season 2. Again, that's going to be available early 2020. So we're thinking first quarter. Finally, I just want to say that personally, it has been an immense pleasure to be the host for the first season, and I'm very excited for season 2. So, we're going to be getting our lab equipment from Gigamon, and we're actually going to be able to do stuff instead of, just talk about it for the most part. Please visit our website. You can get more information about our company, services, story, and also links to all the media outlets, including YouTube, where you can watch all of our episodes in this series, as well as our other series featuring the products that we offer. These are the sources of information used for this episode. All the information is really available in the Gigamon website. You just gotta click around until you find what you're looking for. If you have any questions, if there's any questions in the chat, we'll take those now. If you come up with any questions later, you can either, if you're watching this episode in our YouTube channel, you can leave those questions in the comment section, or you can always reach out to us through email at support_us@exclusivenetworks.com, and we'll get you some answers. All right, so that is our episode for today. Thank you so much for your time, everybody, and you have a happy holiday and a good rest of the week.